Voting is one of the biggest responsibilities we have as citizens in our democracy. With that being said, many people are left out from accessing information that fits their understanding of the ins and outs of voting. Before we talk about ADA rights and laws and how it can impact you, let's look at the history of voting rights and the impact of the general population and people with disabilities. How has it led us to here and now? So, if you think about it, it hasn't been until recently, 70 years ago, yes, 70 years ago, that there have been different policies to help make voting accessible for marginalized communities and people with disabilities. Here's an example: the Voting Rights Act. It was passed in 1965, focusing on banning voter suppression tactics and allowing citizens to have assistance while voting. Later in 1973, Section 504 focused on getting rid of discrimination against voters with disabilities, and also required reasonable accommodations while voting. After that, in 1984, this act was passed, which took accessible voting to the next level by requiring all polling sites to be accessible, which included wheelchair access and providing aids to help with voter registration and voting. I can definitely tell you that our disability community totally understands what it means to fight for our rights. Disability votes and the act of suppressing those votes is something we have seen through history, and this has a serious impact on the elections. But just remember this: the disability community is one of the biggest voting groups, about 38 million. But it's really more than that if you think about the people who want to support those votes. Parents, friends, siblings, roommates, and so many more who join in this fight. That's about 68 million people. That's huge. The Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, was passed on July 26, 1990 by President George W.H. Bush. It is now 2020, which means we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the ADA. But what does the ADA have to do with voting? Well, did you know there are over 11.6 million deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing, and late deafened people who are eligible to vote? We are directly impacted by laws and statutes made here in the U.S. The ADA protects you if you have a disability and you live here in the U.S. If federal programs get funding, regardless of government level, local, state, or federal, they must provide appropriate access and accommodations. So, what does that mean? Well, any type of election is considered a program and service under the government. Some of those services include having effective communication as well. Under Title II of the ADA, all state and local governments must make steps to make communications effective, and that includes the disability community too. So, any information relating to elections must be clear and effective. And that's not just limited to polling places. It also includes debates, the polls, filling out a ballot, registering to vote, and more. Did you know that over 50% of people with disabilities didn't vote in 2018? It was mostly because voting information wasn't accessible. The ADA's requirements apply to all aspects of voting, including voter registration, polling locations, and casting ballots. Whether it's election day or early voting, it must be accessible. In 2016, the DOJ, Department of Justice, made an ADA checklist for polling places. It has some good tools and information for election officials who must follow guidelines, for accessibility features at all polling areas. This is cool. One important thing that benefits deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing people is the ability to have a person with you to vote. In ASL, they can explain the ballot, the process, and everything else in your preferred language. ASL, how cool is that? And there are more rights you could take advantage of too. Check this out. cool that you can benefit from all those options. If you find your rights are being denied or your communication access isn't being provided, you should call your Secretary of State office. They should have a form ready for you to file a complaint. Before you vote, you can also contact that same SOS office and let them know your accessibility and communication needs. For example, maybe a local candidate is hosting a debate. You have the right to an interpreter, CART, or whatever fits your communication needs. And there you have it. Now you know your rights surrounding voting. So please tell us about your experience. Whether you're voting in person, voting early, mail-in, or absentee, we want to know. Actually, wait. There's an organization called SABE, and they're working on something called the Go Voter Project. They want to know any problems or questions you may have about voting. Maybe it's voter registration, getting informed about candidates, or even if you show up to your polling place and you experience negative attitudes from the poll workers. Really, any barriers to voting. They're collecting that information for a final report to share with elected officials at the federal, state, and local levels, as well as civil rights groups. The goal is to improve voting for everyone and to make sure we're all included. Thanks for watching.